even forms like Tirukuthu, where their content may have changed, their costume designs may have changed, context may have changed, the form itself is far older in organic practice than what we call Bharatanatyam today. So the huge shift is the whole proscenium stage. That is changes the whole context of how a form is. Of course, there are sociological factors which we will talk about also. I have another 10 minutes? Okay. Yeah. So then I'll start. So, like I said last time, I just reiterate that until about the 13th century, yeah.
So, summarize and say what is a rasa?
Actually, I have written it down. Many years ago, I suddenly found that piece of paper. Okay, I'm going to use technical words, but I'm going to try and see. This is my paraphrasing after reading. So you can see this. The taste of the experience. I'm replacing technical terms here, okay? The taste of the experience of a sustained emotion using hand movements, limb movements, dialogue, facial emotions in the context of a situation, which could be place, time, story, to which there are reactions, both voluntary and involuntary, and transient possibilities in between, is called a rasa. This is as simple as it gets, by the way. I'll go again. The taste of the experience, the taste. Rasa is ultimately that taste. Observer. Here it's the observer. That's why I said you are a sahridaya. You're a sahridaya, which means sahridaya. You are committed to that taste. You're committed to the possibility of that taste. Let's put it that way. Everybody is committed. The actor also is committed. Or the dancer is also committed. Everybody is committing to that possibility of the taste of the experience. Now, how is the taste happening? Because the presentation makes sure that there is a sustained emotion. For which, what do? They have hand movements, they have dialogues, they have costumes, they have even lighting, for example, and then what do you do for that? You have to create a situation. So a story is created. Within a story, a context is created. But in a story, for example, there is an underlying emotive aspect. There are multiple transient emotive aspects, right? Layerings. The underlying has to be maintained through all these transients. How is it done? Through hand gestures, showing you I'm angry, showing you that I feel disappointed. Through involuntary gestures, when somebody cries on stage, or somebody is sweating on stage, fear. So through all this, through all these transients, I'm able to sustain this emotion. And this moves us to reaching a certain aesthetic fulfillment. That fulfillment is the taste. And that is rasa.
So if you replace all the words there that refer to dance by words that refer to musical performance.
Very good question.
Or to poetry reading. Again, the taste part of it, the mood or emotion evoked in the Sarvadeva, that would be a rasa.
Okay. Two things here. One is Bharata himself only talks about rasa in the context of theatre. First, I want to just say that. We have later expanded rasa to poetry also. You will find people talking about rasa in poetry, rasa in so many things, rasa in music also. It could be rasa in a walk. You take a walk.
Well, there should be a performer.
No, but at some point, not necessarily. Sometimes that is the enabling duty. If I just collapse that, if I collapse the idea of the performative and the observer, a slightly philosophical question of the observed and the observer, but if you can collapse it, because somewhere in the rasa the collapse is happening. Collapse is happening, though it is dispassionate. That's the whole incredible part of it, that you can collapse into a possibility, yet not think that you are getting hurt by that possibility or you are feeling joy in the possibility. That's how the mind works. So I'm saying, I'll give you my own example. I love climbing mountains. I climb high altitude mountains every year. So we leave for the summit climb at about 12 in the night. All technical gear, and we are climbing For the next 7 hours, we are climbing up to altitude of 19, 20, 21,000 feet. There is, when you get up, you're just waiting to walk. I mean, but it's pitch dark, okay? The whole story is climbing the mountain. The darkness is the moment there. And the feeling at that moment is, you're just as high as it's possible. Then as you move, everything starts, transient things, conversations happen. You're tiring. Your body starts reacting. Some voluntarily, some involuntarily. Suddenly the light starts coming on the horizon. The sun is not out, light is out. The warmth starts coming in. The moment the warmth comes, I can tell you, you think different, your body, until you're hallucinating. There's a time at 19,000 feet you will hallucinate because the oxygen level drops. But the light comes, suddenly everything changes. That's when you actually love the sun, you know, a person living in Chennai. And then, after all that, you reach summit at 6:15 a.m. and the sun just pops out. That's rasa. So where is the actor and the acted? It's all happened.
This is rasa without any classification.
This is rasa, there's no... now I'll come to the classification also. But I'm just saying it is a possibility. But I want to place it on record that Bharata doesn't talk about all this in the context of rasa, okay? He does not. But the idea that this is, it's possible in a mathematical equation also. It's very much possible when you're trying to work with an equation. So it is a life experience point. But like I said in the beginning, which is why I talked about intention of the art vis-a-vis what the human possibilities are. They're two different things. You can derive these kind of things from anything. But there are certain art forms that look to push to this. Certain art forms that look to push to something else. But it is not possible for this kind of a rasa to sustain itself alone in a human being without the political, social, literal emotional also being there. If a person did not feel hurt as a personal thing, the person can never feel dispassionate hurt. Unless you actually knew what it meant to feel pain, you can't distance yourself from that pain to feel a certain aesthetic emotion. So both have to coexist in a human being. So I agree with you. It is possible in poetry, it is possible in music, it is possible in anything. But Bharata very clearly talks about rasa only in theatre. Now, I have not yet gone into why I explored that. Again, maybe because he's talking about intention. Maybe he was very clear about when he talks about Gandharva, which I spoke about last time, which is pure music. He never talks about rasa. One big difference he makes is Natya is for the audience. Theatre is for the audience. Whereas Gandharva, which is pure musical, is for the lords. So the intentionality is changed. So you could also say that the kind of experience you get in a pure music is not necessarily rasa, but it's a different kind of an experience. It's also an abstraction. I'm not denying it. I could say that what I explained to you as the mountain is not really rasa. It is also an abstractive experience, but it's not rasa because it's not created by a context and a story and the story that comes. It's a question of how you want to look at it, is how I think it is. I'm counter-arguing both. I'm just counter-arguing both. It depends on how you look. In Bharata's case, he's very clear you need an observer. He is very clear. But you can collapse it if you want. Then you expand the idea of rasa, like I did. I just expanded it beyond a theatrical possibility. But then you could counter-argue and say, but that is not rasa, like you did now. That is an abstraction experience. You seeing the sun in the morning is abstractive experience, I agree with you, but don't call it rasa. For rasa, you need a performer and the audience. You could argue that. So that's a back and forth. I don't have a stance. I personally don't have a stance on it. I just think that it is possible to look at it. If you just look at everything as abstraction, then you have a different perception. If you look at, like you did, as you need clearly a performance that triggers this possibility, then. But then I will say that even a music performance is not creating rasa. I'll push it to the other extent and argue with you. I will say the performative that has, because rasa as per Natya, as per Bharata, is part of a certain contextual story that has to create that possibility. And the emotions that come with that contextual story that has to create that possibility. In pure musical abstraction, I'm not talking about devotional music or nostalgic music, pure musical abstraction, it begins with only the possibility of sound, text, rhythm. There is no contextual story that is being layered in that. So that is a different kind of an abstraction to me, vis-a-vis Natya kind of abstraction. Both are abstract. That's one way of looking at it. Again, it depends on where you want to be seated when you're looking at it. There's no...
I asked this question about what is music to some of my friends. He said Rasa theory, finally it is Ananda.
Yes, I mean, in Rasa himself he talks about that. In fact, that is one of the nuances they give to the Greek differentiation. That the Greeks stop at the pleasure, whereas the Rasa goes up to the idea of Ananda. Now, this is all, it's a bit of an argument. I'm not willing to get into those arguments.
It is Ananda rather than
See, I'll tell you why. Because Rasa classifies this into human emotions. The problem happens there. I know I'm counter-arguing myself on both sides, but that's intentional because it's possible to look at it from this. Because Rasa very clearly says there are 8 Rasas. Okay, and classifies, basically it means that there is a primary emotive layer.
Classification, but your definition did not dwell upon.
I said it finally dwells upon one sustained, I always said, experience of a sustained emotion. So that sustained emotion is called, what is known as the Sthai Bhava, okay?
That sustained emotion, according to you, has to be one of those 8.
Sthai Bhava has different 8, but that's okay. It has to result in that 8. Yes. Not according to Natya Shastra itself. The sustained emotion is also classified into 8. There is some other classification into some 33 or something, whatever. I don't know. I don't remember now the numbers. But the idea is that there is, Rasa is an emotion that can be, an experience, a taste that can be classified as evolved from 8 possibility.
Much of what you read pertained to what the performer.
Yeah, but it is very clear in, this is as per Bharata. As per Bharata, there is a performance, there is a story, there is a context, there is a reaction, there is a costume, there is a word. In dance now there is no word, but there is, say, a lyrical import. If the music is coming, a lyrical possibility. There is music, and all this together reaches you to a possibility of 8 rasas. That is how he describes it. You want to break this rasa down and take it as abstractive, then you can envelop anything into it, which is what I did initially. When I talked about the whole mountain experience, I just broke 8 down and I said, just look at it as an abstractive possibility, then you can bring anything into it. But like you said, no, I will not agree with you, Krishna. There has a performative. Then you take that experience as being a different abstraction, this is being a different abstraction. It depends on how you want to place it completely. But therefore, that you can go back and forth on this. There's no absolute on this at all. But Bharata is very clear. He never talks about rasa in music. He never does. He talks about rasa only as being a possibility of Natya. That is clear. Looks like it's 3. So that's okay. We'll come back, and what we will try and do is, we did a little bit of theory. We'll try and trace the story of the Devadasi. Her story is the Devadasi. So next session we'll try and trace the story of the Devadasi and stop her story about the turn of the 20th century. And next lecture we will actually look at different forms of dance that are presented, what they do in the dance, and look at the actual performative. But next session we'll try and look at the story of the Devadasi, which itself is very fascinating. What did she dance? When did the Devadasi come into being? Is it time immemorial? What is her role in society, in the temple, in the court? And we'll just look at that whole play. Thanks.